Welcome to Kaiser Watch with John Kaiser. I'm your host, Jim Goddard. John, what's coming up on the show today?
Well, Jim, we're going to talk about the Metals Investor Forum turnout last weekend and a bit about the GLD ETF and why the market still isn't taking the gold price seriously with regard to resource juniors. And then we're going to look at the press release that Solitario Resources Corp put out on a Monday last week with regard to the Golden Crest project in the Black Hills of South Dakota.
So what was the mood like at the Metals Investors Forum in Vancouver last week?
Well, last weekend, Friday, Saturday, the weather was nice in Vancouver. It wasn't raining. The location wasn't at the usual place, either at the Fairmont Hotel across from the convention center downtown, or at the Rosewood, which is there at Howe and Georgia, right centrally located. It was near the hockey coliseum in the Marriott Park Hotel, which is also next to the casino that's operated there. So it's a bit out of the way for people. And I was a bit nervous about how many people would show up, but I was pleasantly surprised. There was a very good turnout on Friday. The fairly large room was about 3/4 full of people paying attention to all the presentations. The turnout was not so good on Saturday because it was really only a half day. And if people are going to come in by the SkyTrain out from the Fraser Valley or Lower Mainland, they want to spend the whole day there. So the turnout was weaker. But Friday was an interesting day for the resource juniors on the TS6 Venture. The traded value of the 1,100-1,200 resource listings on the Venture Exchange has been $20 to $40 million worth per day. And on Friday, it surged to just over $80 million, which was the highest for the year. There was a 3-day run back in April or May where it was above $40 million. And this was when gold was breaking out and people saying, oh, is this for real? But of course, in the following weeks, it dropped back down. So I took a look at Friday's trading activity, wondering, was this a quickening of the market finally taking gold, which was at $26.35, taking it seriously? And it turned out that the top trader for over $30 million dollars worth was Vizsla Silver, which had a couple days earlier, it was up at 290 on fairly good volume, but then it announced a 260 bought deal for $65 million. That closed on Thursday. It was free trading immediately. So what was interesting about that was that on Friday, there weren't any big block trades, but there were lots of buyers for stock that the clip and flippers, well, there weren't any warrants to clip, but those grinding out the pennies from the 260 discounted price. So between the 265 and 275 range, there was a lot of interest. And it was reflecting, I do believe, the sense that maybe it's finally happening. And when you looked at the other value traders, yes, there were gold stocks up there like Snowline. They were up there in the top traders. New Gold was up there, or the other one that has the project up in northern BC. These ones were all doing quite well. And however, by Monday, it had dropped back below $40 million. And so the last couple of days, it's back to the $40 million worth of traded value. So that was an anomaly, but you cannot deny that the audience out there is sort of feeling these pulses of, is it happening? Is it happening? And becomes excited. And that's what I think was behind the good turnout on Friday. Now, a theme that many of the presenters talked about was that in the past three months or so, the North American audiences have finally started to take an interest in the various gold ETFs, of which the GLD ETF sponsored by the World Gold Council is the most important one. And I've tracked it since it was launched way back in 2005. And at its worst there in mid-February when gold was back below $2,000, it was down 2.1 million ounces from the start of the year. Now it is down, as of yesterday, Tuesday, September 24th, it was down only about 65,000 ounces. And I have these graphics where I plot the daily change. And when you look at this, there's nothing spectacular happen. When you look at the larger time scale going back to that period, 2008 to 2012, what's happening now is nothing in comparison to what was going on back then. And yet gold is in uncharted territory. It's at a record high, and yet dribbles back a bit, but then it inches higher, makes a new high. So we are in a bullish uptrend. The question is, why is not anybody taking it seriously? And I think the simple answer is it's the optics. If you just take a sort of a 5-year chart of this and look at it, it looks pretty boring. Yes, gold's up, from 2,000 to 2,600, 30% or so. But when you look at what stocks like Nvidia and that have done, this is chump change. So the optics are just not good enough. It's very slow in terms of trending higher. So new audiences who have never really cared about gold, it's just not on the radar. It's people like myself who have followed this since the late 70s and who understand that what's happening now with gold, like a 68% real gain from $4,400 in 1980, inflation adjusted, we can see that it's important. But I think we do need to see gold go $3,000 before a wider audience does take it seriously. I have heard that at the Denver Gold Forum that took place last week, the generalist funds seem to be aware that something's happening with gold. And so they were there checking out, not to buy gold, but to check out what the producers have available. But in terms of interest for the resource juniors, it's still not there. Not even amongst the better quality ones that are still kind of limping along, raising money here and there. The ones that are more prominent, such as Vizsla Silver, which are able to raise these big financings, they are doing well. And it's nice to see that today, Vizsla, which got knocked back earlier this week below 260 for a brief period, is back over 270. So there is this incoming buying, nibbling away, but there's nothing really spectacular that you can see in any of the chart data to suggest that, oh yeah, we are now in an erupting gold bull market. But the reasons to believe this is happening, they are there, and they are not going away.
What did Solitario report for its Golden Crest project during the Denver Gold Forum last week?
Solitario Resources Corp started drilling in July at the Golden Crest project. It's now up to 35,000 acres. It's a big land position in the western part of the Black Hills, in which only 3 holes have ever been drilled, and those were by Homestake way back many decades ago, when it did some scout holes to see what the Precambrian basement that hosts the Homestake Iron Formation deposit was like. They did hit the right sort of rocks, the Iron Formation rocks that are on the eastern side of the Black Hills where the Homestake deposit is located. But they never assayed any of the Paleozoic sedimentary layer cake that sits on top of it. So we know really nothing about that. Solitario Resources Corp knows where these holes are, and a couple of them are going to be near where they will be drilling. But this whole area is completely unexplored. And part of the reason is it's all oxidized, and the gold is in a micron form. So that when the prospectors from 120 years ago or so came and they would try to pan it, not only was it the wrong rocks at surface, I mean, even younger rocks than the Deadwood Formation that hosts the Wharf system, which is only like a 50 million year old system versus a 1.7 billion year old system for Homestake deposit itself. They just saw no color. And so they moved on, and the area got the stigma. Well, it didn't happen there. 90 million ounces in the other half of the Black Hills, but nothing is here. So on September 16th, Solitario reported assays for the first 3 holes drilled into the downpour target, and they were angled holes in various directions. After the market closed, they haven't really provided any graphics with the press release, which was disappointing. But then Chris Harold did a presentation at the Gold Forum, and I do say anybody who's interested in this story, they should watch this, because he had a whole bunch of new graphics, and I've clipped some of them and made them available in the comment that accompanies this Kaiser Watch episode. And one of the things that struck me that he said a couple of sort of like best ever type statements. And one of them was that this 80 square kilometers that represents the Golden Crest target area, he says, is the biggest gold mineralized hydrothermal system that he has ever seen, and completely unexplored. 3 holes into it. Now the stock had a decent day, at least in the NYSE AM market, but nothing spectacular. The holes were sort of like 32 meters or 1.68 grams from close to surface, 9.9 meters of 0.72, 26.4 meters of 2.56 gram per ton. Not off the scale discovery holes, but given that they were basically in an area of surface samples, decent surface samples, it could easily have come up considerably worse. But it didn't have the optics to make the market go crazy. But what the company did present in that presentation Chris did was a lot more context, showing where all their targets are, where their drill platforms that are approved. And one of the things that really struck me was that this area that is the subject of the Ponderosa application, it's in the eastern part. The anomalies, the targets, are substantially better than in the western part, and downpour sort of off to the edge. And we also learned that the Wild Rose target, which they reported earlier this year, that was so recent that it isn't even part of the Ponderosa application. So there is years of drilling to be done on this project to sort out what is going on. Now, they did drill into the basement. They got into the Deadwood Formation. There is a fault there that's post-mineral, and they did not really intersect much interesting in the Deadwood Formation. But then this is just the first hole, and where exactly the fluids flowed through the layer cake, that still remains to be seen. But one of the graphics that they provided has a series of sort of red lines, sort of northeast oriented, and they believe these are crustal scale breaks. And there's 2 sets, one in the western part of the property and one in the eastern part. And Chris made the statement that they now believe that the sort of east-west structural trend that hosts the Homestake and the wharf system to the northeast, it wraps around in a southwest direction in the Golden Crest property area. So they're on the 6th hole now. They revealed where the other ones have been drilled. That they obviously are not going to say anything of what they see, and because of the nature of this micron-sized gold, they can't tell from looking at the core, other than like, okay, well, this is the kind of sort of hydrothermally altered rock, oxidized. And by the way, apparently it's oxidized all the way to the Precambrian basement. So another one of the things that he pointed out, this is in the Ponderosa area, and Chris kind of hoped that they might have a permit from the U.S. Forest Service by June of next year, which is about the time that they want to get into that area. They will be drilling these incredible targets in that area, and one of them on surface sort of it's this 234 meter trench, whose curviness is basically following the logging road along which they trenched. And Chris pointed out this is the longest, most continuous surface mineralization in a trench that he has ever seen. And of all the samples within this 234 meter trench, only 10 of them were about 0.25 gram per ton. And the whole thing averaged about 0.8 gram per ton continuously. And this is very significant because this is all oxidized, which means that it should be heat leachable, and it's a average grade that's better than what Coeur is now mining and in the Wharf area. But of course, we'll have to wait till next summer to find out what it does in the third dimension. The presentation is well worth watching, especially in the last third of it, where he addresses his two zinc projects, and he made another hyperbolic type of statement, saying, these two projects, the Lick in Alaska and Florida Canyon in Peru, are among the top high-grade zinc undeveloped deposits in the world. And Florida Canyon, $90 million have been spent on this deposit in the past 25 years. It was a grassroots discovery by Solitario. They spent just under $2 million. Cominco optioned it and spent about $17 million. And since then, Nexa has spent the rest of that $90 million. And they're waiting for Nexa's budget committee to decide how big the drill program will be next year. They'll find out in November. And they've already done a PEA. They've already got 10 years of mine life there in the existing Florida Canyon deposit. And what we're looking for is for Nexa finally to get around and test some of these other targets like San Jose, about 15 kilometers to the northeast, where they have excellent surface values and they have the right horizon that hosts these Mississippi Valley type deposits in this area. And what we believe is that before making a decision on whether to build the Florida Canyon milling complex, they want a sense of how much more ore will be found within the property boundaries eventually as they mine out the initial deposit, and so that they can scale the size for something that's a multi-decade long mine, which is of course what the stakeholders, the community stakeholders want. They don't want some 10-year disruption of their community where things are great and then it goes back to being a ghost town. So if a decent-sized program gets approved in November for next year, not only could this result in additional important high-grade discoveries, but it could also signal, okay, now Nexa might finally roll up its sleeve and take this project to a construction decision. And the beauty for Solitario is that it is carried all the way to a production decision. All the costs are Nexa's costs. It will end up with 30% when this happens, when a construction decision is made. And Nexa will put up its share of the 30% capex, which Solitario would have to pay back from 50% of the cash flow. So they would be immediately getting cash flow. And when you look at Solitario, you can look at it as this Golden Crest project, which is one of I think the most exciting gold exploration play in North America. And are you paying the dollar a share for the Canadian, or the 70 cents a share, 80 cents a share for the U.S.? Are you paying that for Golden Crest, or are you paying this for the Florida Canyon project? Because when this all happens, it will be acquired by Nexa. And so you're looking, I think, at $1 to $2 a share value from this Florida Canyon zinc deposit. And one of the interesting things about that deposit, the zinc grades up there, 8 to 11%, whereas the lead grade is only about 1% or so. And there's a 15 gram per ton silver credit. And it's good that there's some lead there, because the silver would report to the lead concentrate, never to the zinc concentrate. But in the future, if electric vehicles replace the internal combustion engine fleet, there will be no more major usage for lead. In fact, there'll be this enormous amount of lead from recycled lead acid batteries that comes into the market and crushes the lead price. So if you're looking at zinc lead deposits, look for a high zinc to lead ratio. And that was what makes the Florida Canyon quite an interesting project. Anyways, I'm pretty excited. In fact, I'm delighted that the market, after initial modest burst of interest in Solitario, has backed off, waiting for these other holes. Again, these are scout holes, first holes ever. You can't tell in advance if it's going to be a barn burner. One of them could be. We won't know until we get it. But after all this information that they have now put in the public domain, giving you a context of where everything is, how it hangs together, after several years of them just giving little fragments that were difficult to, where exactly are they in that 35,000 acre land package? Now you can start seeing what's unfolding. So for people who like to understand what they're betting on, Solitario Resources Corp now is an even better buy today than it was a week ago before this press release came out on September 16th.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
I'm Jim Goddard. Comments made on Kaiser Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as a recommendation to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at kaiserresearch.com.